Ladies and boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, global liquidity is going to be the main talk today. We also are going to be doing a overview of the markets. Right, we're going to go over Bitcoin, we're going to go over altcoin dominance and a few other things as well. Right, this video will have that specific thumbnail with the logo of mine. So you guys always know that this is going to be the video where we go over the basics and over the markets, just generally speaking, right? So we can see, right, global liquidity. This is global liquidity. We know back in, January, December time, these were the highs over here. Then we had the bottoms, right? And we're somewhere over here right now. We are somewhere over here, but this is not the main point I want to talk about. I just want to talk about global liquidity first before I dive to Bitcoin. We can see that global liquidity is looking to be breaking these highs over here. So very, very positive. We are still in a uptrend, right? We are still in the uptrend. And if we do treat this like a chart, we can see that we are consistently creating higher and higher and higher lows, right? So we are consistently going to the upside. I do believe there's going to be a nice burst of liquidity, which is very, very nice, right? Obviously, what we want to see is for this red line to continue moving up very, very aggressively to the upside, right? That is what we want to see, because when we're going to see something like that happen, that means, altcoin season, Bitcoin, whatever the context of the market is at time, will be pumping super, super hard. And in case you're new and a little bit lost, what I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen, right? When we take the global liquidity from the top to Bitcoin's top, we see 91 days. When we take it from the bottom to the bottom, the last weekly sell, we can see 91 days. Now, we have been using this tool to overall measure how Bitcoin is going to be doing, right? It has been fairly accurate for the most part. If we take this top over here, go here, this was Bitcoin's top, 91 days. We go from the bottom to here, we did have a sell candle. But here's the thing, right? We were expecting some type of burst to the upside, but things have been a little bit slow. When we take it from this top to here, 91 days. We did expect the global liquidity sweeps to be happening. So that did happen. That is very good, right? But we expected some type of pump, over the next week or two maximum. And we can see currently with the way the weekly candle is, it's actually not looking good. Now, the good thing is that we still have many, many days left until the weekly candle closes. But if the weekly were to close, let's just say the way it is right now, then that would be forming a lower high on the weekly, which means we could very well and would be, ranging between this range before we drop off a little bit. And then from there, we would have to see whether we bounce off the 102,000 zone or if we would just simply go lower, right? Now, the annoying thing about the markets, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's gaps. Okay, there are a few gaps. If there were no gaps, I do believe things would be a little bit different. But we can see there's a huge major gap at $105,000. So, I expect this gap to get filled up personally. So at the bare minimum, I expect this to get filled up, which is annoying, right? Because that means we do have to pull back and we do have to stall out our main mission. Now, there is also another gap, ladies and gentlemen, right? The next gap is at $92,000. Now, I don't think personally we're going to be coming back here. I do think that we would be coming back here for the bear season, but this is something we still have to keep an eye out, right? Structure at the moment is still fairly bullish, so I would not really worry too much. But of course, we have to monitor how the rest of this week goes. This all depends on this week. If this weekly candle closes the way we kind of anticipated it, or gave a hypothetical of, like let's say down here, right, it would create a lower high compared to this. So at the bare minimum, we want to see this weekly candle close above this one. We want to see it close above 109,000. Generally speaking, right, closing above 109,000 would be the most ideal, right? Because as we can see, that's where the weekly candle closes. So we want to create a higher high. Now, here's the bigger picture, ladies and gentlemen. We are still in this 3-month candle. So what does that mean? Well, we knew, right? Once we started to pump October, November, December, those were the bullish months. And then once we started to get retracement back in January, February, March, I said already in February that we're not going to recover until April. We're not going to start recovering until April. Why? Because the bigger picture was looking at this 3-month candle. It was looking at January, February, March. So I knew that we're going to be bearish until the March ends. And that's exactly what happened. Then what do we say? Well, we said that there's probably going to be some type of manipulation at the bottom. And guess what? There was a manipulation for a couple of days. And then April started to reverse. And we said April, May, June are going to be the recovery months. And so far, everything has played out perfectly. Even if the 3-month candle closed now, technically it would do its job, right? It would do its job of recovering. Now, I expect July, August, September to be a pump. I personally do. Now, some people are kind of 50-50 because they say, oh, well, summer's kind of slow. But for me, I don't really care about the season or the days or the dates necessarily. I care about how the structure closes. Of course, if June is going to be terrible, right? If the rest of June is going to be terrible and we get something similar to this, where we get a huge rejection on the 3-month with a huge wick and with the body close very, very weak, then I would be very, very worried that this is it, right? The reversals are in. But as of right now, there's nothing to worry about. We do have roughly less than 20 days of data for June to see how this 3-month candle closes. Overall, I do expect things to be really, really solid. We can see that the last time we had a candle that was close to, its all-time high or close to the highs, the next 3 months did burst up, right? Now, of course, this candle right here is a little bit different than this one, but the message is still the same, right? The message is still the same. The same thing with this, right? Back in 2020, when the candle over here was near its highs, right? The next 3-month candle did a push, which is why I still anticipate for July, August, and September to be pushing. Now, of course, there will be more updates if something changes, right? If something changes, then of course, I'll let you guys know. In terms of the monthly closes, we can see that, ladies and gentlemen, we do have this high over here and we have this high over here. So, May closed as a higher high, which is what we love to see. Now, what I really want to see, generally speaking, right, even if June is going to be a little bit sideways, I do want to see a lot of closes above like 103,000, 102,000 mainly, even in terms of weekly, right? If we start consolidating here and we still show bullish momentum and bullish pressure, then that's fine, right? If we have to wait, we have to wait. At the end of the day, someone like me does not control the markets. I simply just go based off what the data says. Sometimes in the videos, right, I will say what I think is going to happen, what I want to happen. But sometimes, especially when I start breaking down the analysis and I start showing you guys, that is what is going to happen, right? Just the same way we talked about back here, how we knew it was going to start pumping up, because we had the technical analysis. Same thing with the reversals, right? I saw how March ended. I knew what was going to happen, right? So you guys just have to pay attention, right? Me wanting something to happen versus knowing something is going to happen are two very different things. And usually knowing when something is going to happen requires more and more data and confirmation. So yeah, as of right now, we are just monitoring how the weekly candles are going to close. If we go and remove everything and add our indicator, right, just to make things simple, ladies and gentlemen, we can see that we're still very, very bullish, right? Especially on the weekly, there's been pretty much no signs of anything ever being bearish. The closest we got to was this orange line slightly crossed below the green line. But when the orange line is above the green line, that means we are very, very nice and bullish. So the weekly still looks fantastic. The daily is closing in a little bit, but it is technically still bullish because of the structure we have, because of how this daily candle right now is showing a little bit of weaknesses, right? Of course, if we go to the 4-hour, it's a little different, right? You gotta realize the 4-hour switches more often, But in terms of daily and weekly bias, we are looking good. And of course, when we go to something like the monthly, I mean, we are nowhere near showing any bearish signs. Okay, so everything looks good. Let's look in terms of the Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is a little bit weird right now, right? It is a little bit weird. There is like low momentum for Bitcoin dominance, but there's also not that much momentum for it to break. It's kind of just consolidating. Now, I still ultimately do believe and do know that this is bullish, right? So I do expect Bitcoin dominance to continue going up higher to our main zones, right? We believe roughly it is going to go to somewhere of 70%. Once we get to 70%, that doesn't mean it's going to break right away, right? This is what I'm talking about that I just talked about 2 minutes ago, right? It doesn't mean necessarily it's going to break right away. We need to wait for confirmation. But I know more or less that is our general zone where I expect, Bitcoin dominance to go up, break down, then we go sideways, and then the official altcoin season happens. But during this dump, right, the initial dump of a couple percent, altcoins are already going to start really, really pumping, which is why I'm personally, accumulating now, dollar cost averaging now, looking at different projects. I found a few gems that I really do think are gonna do well this cycle. When we go to the others dominance chart, ladies and gentlemen, we can see that we are still very, very bearish, and I still expect to go to roughly 6.5% before we potentially see some type of reversal. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you do want a portfolio review, highly recommend joining the Discord, being in the community. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.